Hello, today I'll be doing a video on IRI's library, or our data library. This library holds both data classes and rules. The IRI library helps in finding and masking PII, and it's used in every single one of our masking jobs. For this demonstration, you do not need a database connection, but for this example, I will be using one, and I'll leave a link in the description to show you how to connect to your database if you're having a little bit of trouble. So first things first is I'm just going to go ahead and create a new project. So you can either right click inside your Project Explorer and go to New Project, or you can go up to File, New, and IRI Project. So I'll go ahead and just give this a name, and I'm going to go ahead and leave this ticked where it says Populate Library with Data Classes. We'll go ahead and take a look at those a little bit later. For now, we'll just click Finish. And our testing project is now available. And you can see right here, our IRI library is inside the folder. So we'll go ahead and open that up. And there's a lot to take in here. But first, we're going to go ahead and discuss what is a data class. So a data class is a way to help identify and find PII within whatever data you may have, which can include files, databases, structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. There are two portions to a data class. One is finding the PII, and the other is masking or any other type of rule that is being applied once that PII has been found. So let's go ahead and take a look at this IRI library. So up here you can see the data class library details, and that just gives you a little bit of information about it. And on the left hand side you can see we have a little library icon right here, and inside of that is going to be our data classes and our rules section. So let's go ahead and create a brand new data class. So in order to do so, we're just going to go up here and we're going to click this new data class button. This is going to give us a new prompt, and we're just going to go ahead and give this a name of whatever we want, and we can choose to add a description if we'd like. So as you can see here over on the left side, it's actually been populated, and we can go ahead and click that and it opens up the data class. So up top here we have some data class details, which has our name, which we can go ahead and edit if we want and change the name from here. We can choose to add the description, like I said, a default rule, which we'll get into in the next video. And moving on, we can either choose to activate or deactivate the data class. And this is a cool little feature because if we created this data class for a requirement that our company had, and let's say that the requirement got changed, there would be no need to delete this data class, and instead we can just deactivate it. So that way, if the requirements change again in the future, we can go ahead and just come back and just reactivate this data class, and we would know that everything was working properly without having to redo the rule or the matcher details or any of that other information. So moving on to the RDB column type filter. Here, this can narrow down your search looking for a specific data type. This can be helpful when using matching patterns that are more general, and they may share similar names with other locations or columns. So pretty much what this means is, let's say that you are trying to match on a very specific column, but it has a general name, or it shares a name with, another table, but they have different data types. You can go ahead and just, click these to narrow down your search. So if we were looking for blob, we would just go ahead and just select a blob and deselect everything else, and then it would only be looking at the blob data types. But for most general use cases, you can just leave this on. It's not necessary. It's just kind of another ability for you to have control over what you're searching for. Moving on to the matcher details. And as you can see here, we have a location matcher and a data matcher. Now, this is where all of the searching is going to be done finding that PII. So I'll go ahead and pull up a database real quick, just that way you can see. And just in case you're curious as to what I did there, I just went over here to the Data Source Explorer. I opened up my database. I opened up my schemas. I selected which schema I wanted, and then inside of that, underneath the tables, I just went ahead and right-clicked, Data, and then Sample Contents, and this brings up just a small sample of the contents in that database. So, we'll start with location matchers. For location matchers, the best way to think about this is to just think about it as a column name. So, for instance, if we wanted to match on customer ID, and we wanted every single item inside this customer ID to be matched on and to be masked, we would just go ahead and go into the location matcher. We would click Add. We would give it a name, so we'll say customer ID, just like that. We can choose to give it a description. Again, we can either activate or deactivate, and we have a type of a location pattern. So from here, in the pattern area, we would just type customer ID as it's explicitly shown in the column name, just like that. So this is a regex pattern, right? So it is case sensitive. So if we went ahead and left the C such as that, it would not match upon this customer ID column because it is case sensitive, right? So we can go ahead and click OK. And as you can see here, our location matchers are now populated with a name of customer ID, right? A type of a pattern matcher. We're going to include, and then the pattern, what it's actually searching for is going to be customer ID, just like that, right? And let's say that we wanted to use the same rule for one data class all in itself. We can go ahead and just select Add again, do another one. So we'll just do full name and full underscore name, just like that. Again, matching case sensitive to that. All right, perfect. So now we understand how location matchers work. Let's go ahead and move on to the data matchers. So data matchers are a little bit more complicated because it actually looks at the data inside of that column or unstructured or semi-structured data. So, for instance, it would be the exact same situation as the location matchers since we're just using a regex pattern, right? We would just click Add. Here, we'd give it a name. So for the first one, I'm going to go ahead and do date. A description I'm going to leave blank. Again, data pattern is fine. And for the pattern, here we can actually select create, right? And we'll just give it the same name. Here we can actually put the regex pattern right in here. So I've created this regex pattern to hopefully match onto these dates that are here inside of this format, right? Because since we're using a regex pattern and it's looking at the data has to be somewhat similar or very similar in order for it to match onto this explicit regex pattern that I created. So we'll go ahead and just throw this date in here into this test sample, 2021-10-17. And as you can see, it does have a match. So we can go ahead and actually test our regex pattern to make sure that we are matching on that information. So let's say if we went ahead and took that 17 out, it would be wrong. Or if this dash wasn't there, it would be wrong and it wouldn't match. So here we can actually again test to make sure that our regex pattern does work for the data that we want to match on. And here we can go ahead and select OK. And as you can see here, we now have a data matcher named date that will match on this date. So I'm actually doing all of this inside of one data class, but it's best practice to separate the data classes into each individual PII that you're trying to mask on. And the reason for that is because the default rule, you can only have one of these applied per data class. So if you wanted to, format preserve customer ID, but you wanted to do a pseudo replace on a full name, you cannot do that all inside this one data class. And instead, you would have to, again, just create a new data class, and we'll call this one date. And then you would have to put in the matcher details into this one. So essentially, we're just separating the data classes as to what it's matching on. That way we have more control over what rules we want applied to each individual data that we're matching on. So since we already have customer ID, full name, and date inside of this one, we'll go ahead and just move over to date, and we'll change the name to something else that I want to match on, such as phone number. As you can see here, it got changed. And we'll go into the data matchers section again. We'll click add. We'll change this to phone number, create, same name. And for the regex pattern, I have another one that's created right here. So I'll go ahead and throw that in there. And we'll test it on the data that we have inside of here. So I know it's a little hard to see, but this is actually the phone number column. So we'll go ahead and throw the test sample in there. And as you can see, the 321.184.5192 matches, and it's going to go ahead and do whatever rule that we have on that. And as you can see here, the way that this data or regex pattern is matching is that I can actually remove some of this stuff, because that's just how, oh, I'm sorry. If we remove any of that, it's not going to match, right? So if we remove any of that information, it won't match. But if we just went ahead and changed any of this to have a similar format, it will match regardless. We'll select OK, and we'll go ahead and select OK again. So we'll go ahead and just take a quick look at the default data classes that are provided when you create a new project, if you choose to do so. So looking at these data classes, you can see here that these have both location and data matchers, and I wanted to point out that they can be used in unison in order to better identify your PII. So for instance, if you have, we'll look at this location matcher. Since it's just a regex pattern, it's looking at names that include credit and card. So there could be some variation of it inside of the name. So for this instance, we have a full underscore name. If we had a credit card, it would be looking for credit, potentially underscore, and card. Or it could look for just credit and card. So these are very general use cases that we provided for you just to make your jobs a little bit easier and to get more comfortable with it. But as I said, the location and data matchers can be used in unison, so they will both be searching at the same time looking for that PII. And just like that, we have explored data classes and rules, just the most general outcome, but hopefully you have a better idea of what they are and how you use them. And in the next video, I'll go ahead and show you our rules and how to apply them to these data classes.